Today we're going to find out what the first winter in Summit County was like for the Dercums. Chapter 4, High Country Winter. November came. The snowstorm had left only 6 inches, but it was enough for sledding on the hill back of the cabin. The kids were having their end of the season ride on their bucking barrel bronc that Max had rigged up. By taking an old oil drum and stringing 2 ropes through the ends, and then tying these ropes to 4 trees, he could pull the drum up to the height of a small horse. Then, by working the ropes, he could make the barrel go up and down and really buck. With an old saddle we'd found in the barn tied to the barrel, the kids could sit astride this contraption. They loved riding their horse and waving their cowboy hats in the air. Now, Saturday was our weekly bath night. After all, heating all that water on the cook stove any more often was just too much work. In between, we had spit baths. We had purchased a big wash tub, which we put in the middle of the kitchen floor. I carried in bucket after bucket of water to heat and fill the tub. The first bath I thought I'd make really good, so I filled the tub to the brim, planning to bathe both children at once. Well, forgetting about displacement, I lifted Sunny in first. The water poured over the sides, and I went flying on the linoleum floor, landing on my behind in front of the door. Every time I tried to get up, I'd slide around some more. Rolf, sitting on a chair, was convulsed with laughter at my predicament. Max, hearing all the hilarity, came in from the bedroom and quickly got the mop and mopped up the floor. The floor was never cleaner, but I was the one who really needed a bath after that. By clearing a section of the hillside up the mountain, Max had built a slalom slope and a ski jump with his cat. We packed the in run and the landing. He could jump 75 feet on it, but I was content with the one jump of 25 feet I had made. I had never jumped before, and I've never done so since. It was exhilarating. And Max instructed me, just pretend you're an eagle and you're descending on your prey as your feet hit the ground. Well, it worked, and neither of us fell. One day, Max took the cat down to our homestead that would someday become the Ski Tip Ranch, just to clean up around the ranch and bury some of the junk. A cowboy came riding by on a beautiful palomino. He introduced himself as Frank Byers and told Max he had a ranch about 6 miles to the west and a bit north of Dillon. Some of his cattle had strayed, and he was trying to locate them. Seeing Max's cat, he asked Max if he'd be willing to come and do some bulldozing for him. Come on to dinner tomorrow night and bring your family, Frank told Max. We were so happy to have the chance to meet a ranch family. What a great family the Byers were. Their ranch had a sweeping view over the meadows to the entire Gore Wilderness Range. Their 2 daughters were in high school. Mrs. Byers told me it wasn't always easy to get them to school because they had to drive through big snowdrifts in winter. None of us had an inkling that the big Dillon Dam would one day make of the Byers Meadows a beautiful lake, one of the most dramatic sailing lakes in the high country. At the cabin, our only reading light, in fact, our only light, was a kerosene lamp. In order to see what was cooking, or to see to stir the gravy on the stove in the dark corner of the kitchen, I would have to hold the lamp over the stove. Seeing me do this, Max said, "This is too dangerous. We'd better go over the hill to Idaho Springs and see if there's a better and safer light we can buy. Also, Christmas is coming and we need candles for our tree. Over Loveland Pass we went. At Idaho Springs, we found a store which sold anything a miner or a housewife needed. There we were told that Coleman lanterns gave better light and can hang from the ceiling. We bought two of these. Also, there were the old Christmas tree candles I remember from my childhood. But how to fasten them to the branches? Digging around on a long wooden table of miscellaneous items in the back of the store, we found some soft, pliable wire with which we could fasten the candles to the tree. Oh, it was a wonderful feeling that all these long used old things seemed new to us. A feeling of discovery of things forgotten. Why, just a few months before, we'd been living in a modern house on a city street. And here we were, thrilled to find this invention, a Coleman gas lantern. Thanksgiving came, which we shared with Dimp and Lula, but not much more snow. We had heard of Loveland ski area on the east side of Loveland Pass, so one day we checked it out. But there was only a short tow rope, no T-bars or chairlifts. Crossing the 12,000-foot pass plus paying for tow tickets made us decide to stay home until more snow came. Christmas was a short week away. Max found a small spruce which he planted in the snow outside our kitchen window. While I would read to the children in their bedroom before supper, Max would quietly go outside and light the candles on the tree. We didn't dare have the tree indoors with the fire hazard of those candles. After being called to supper, the children would discover the lighted tree by themselves and call to us, "Come, see what Santa's elves have done. They've lighted the tree again." It was a great Christmas. Then the heavy snows came. It snowed for a whole week. Our little cabin was soon well insulated. After the storm, I looked out of the window one morning to see Max on his skis packing the snow in front of our cabin. He packed the snow tightly. I couldn't figure out what he was doing until he came in for lunch and announced, "I'm going to build an igloo." The packed snow set up quite hard, and by cutting it into blocks and stacking them, an igloo soon took shape. He built a bench of snow blocks in the back of the main room. He had found in the barn a pot-bellied wood stove which he put in the middle of the room, with the chimney sticking up through the rounded roof. To enter, one had to bend over slightly in order to get through the tunnel entrance that he had built in front. In the barn, he had also found an old buffalo fur coat. By carefully cutting this, he made a cover for the bench in the igloo. From the leftover fur, he made a pair of cowboy chaps to fit Rolf. The children had the most marvelous playhouse. Sunlight filtered through the snow, diffusing the whole room with blue and rosy light. The kids would crawl out of the igloo, play in the snow and sun, and then crawl back in to the igloo room to get warm. Adults could even stand up in the main room. Old Dimp drove up one afternoon and almost ran off the road. "Ain't that log cabin big enough for you all?" We all laughed. "This is a good time to christen our new addition," I said. I brewed up some hot buttered rum, and we sat in the rosy glow of the igloo, getting a bit of rosy glow within us. Dimp balanced his drink on his knee and said, Now's as good a time as any to tell you a story of a cold night one summer when I could have used some of this here brew. We all settled back on the buffalo fur couch to hear his story. It was a moonlit night, Dimp began. I had the dray wagon business in Dillon, and then at that time, and used to haul freight from Kremlin to Dillon. Sometimes I'd haul all the way from Craig and Steamboat Springs. Since those were over Rabbit Ears Pass, it'd take 2 or 3 days. But this time, the story I'm telling was only up Peru Creek to the Pennsylvania mine. Well, the phone rang one night about midnight. There had been an accident at the Pennsylvania mine, and a man had been killed. They wanted to know if I could come right away and bring the body back to Dillon. The mill and mine, called the Pennsylvania, was a big operation in the early 1900s, and they'd had a telephone line strung all the way from Dillon. Lula didn't want me to go alone, so she dressed in warm clothes and went along. It was a dark, cold ride, bouncing along on the old Keystone and Montezuma roads and up the winding, rutted Peru Creek Road to the mine. When we arrived at the mine, the full moon came out over Argentine Mountain. The miners were standing around. They weren't talking much. You know how it is late at night like that. They were silhouetted against the moonlight, but their shadows were long and real black on the ground. It was real spooky. After helping me load the stiff body onto the flatbed of the dray wagon, they watched silently as we started the long ride home. With the clear moonlight, it was easier to see the road. The horse went on at a good clip, since the grade was a nice gradual downhill. The boys up at the mine had passed around a bottle, so Lula and I were feeling more cheerful, and we sang some good old songs. Well, we reached the corner of Montezuma and Keystone Roads when Lula looks back. "The wagon's empty, Dimp," she yells at me. "The body's gone." Well, Dimp continued, turned around we did, for we had to start the long trip back, hoping that the body hadn't bounced off too far back. Finally, part way up Peru Creek Road, on one of the curves, we found the body. It had just jolted itself right off of that wagon. Come back and listen for more of that first winter of the Dercums in Summit County.